Are you excited to buy land but worried you'll choose the wrong lot? I bought and sold over 600 lots online, but it took some painful and expensive mistakes to get there. So in this video, I'll show you the 10 land buying mistakes that can wreck your investment and exactly how to avoid them. Mistake number 1. When I was just starting out in land investing, I bought a half-acre corner lot. Paved roads, city access, looked perfect. I checked the satellite view, saw some power lines near the back and thought no big deal. But a few weeks later, we got the drone footage back and my stomach dropped. The entire lot, not just the back, was covered in transmission lines. So I called the county to ask about setback rules and they told me you can't build anywhere near those lines, which meant you can't build a house on it, and that killed the value for most buyers. So here's lesson number 1. Don't rely on satellite maps alone. Get drone footage before you buy or walk the property yourself, and always check for utility easements and county setback rules ahead of time. Mistake number 2. Just because a property looks like it has road access doesn't mean you're legally allowed to use it. Take this lot for example, Daniel Chamley's parcel. It appears to have access via Rayfield Lane. You can literally drive up to it. But here's the problem. Unless there's something in writing, like a deeded easement, you might not have the legal right to use that road. So let's say you hire a contractor to build a cabin. A neighbor could stop you and say, "You're crossing my land. You don't have permission." Imagine buying land you can't even legally reach. That's a nightmare for buyers and a resale killer. So here's lesson number 2. Always check that you legally have the right to use the road, not just that it looks drivable. Call the county, ask for the plat map. Don't rely on driveways, dirt tracks, and Google Maps lines. Why? Because physical access means you can drive there, but legal access means you have the right to, and that's what actually matters. Mistake number 3. Here's a mistake that can turn your dream lot into a no-build zone. At first glance, the property might look lush, quiet, and perfect. But if it's classified as wetlands, you might not be allowed to build, clear trees, or even put in a driveway without going through expensive, time-consuming permits if you're allowed at all. But here's the thing. Wetlands aren't always obvious. They're not just swamps. They can be dry-looking wooded areas or grassy fields that flood seasonally. So here's lesson number 3. Always check for wetlands before you buy. How? Well, you can search the National Wetlands Inventory online or use mapping tools like Land ID and turn on the wetlands layer, or simply ask the county, because once you buy it, you're responsible for it even if you can't build a thing. Mistake number 4. Here's one that confuses a lot of buyers, even the experienced ones, not understanding the difference between a flood zone and a floodway. They sound similar, but they're very different when it comes to what you can actually do with the land. Flood zone means there's some risk of flooding. You can usually still build. You might need to raise the foundation or carry flood insurance, but it's doable with the right prep. But floodway? That's the land FEMA designates as needing to stay open so floodwaters have a path to flow through. In most cases, you can't build anything in a floodway, not even a driveway. I've seen buyers get excited about a flat open lot near a river only to find out later it was in the floodway and totally off limits for development. So here's lesson number 4. Always check the FEMA flood map before you buy. You can go directly to FEMA.gov or use tools like Land ID and turn on the FEMA floodplain layer for a visual overlay. And when in doubt, ask the county planning department, because a lot in the floodway might look like a deal, but it's really just nature's overflow lane, and that's not where you want to build your future. Mistake number 5. This one flies under the radar until it's too late. Buying land with a conservation easement without knowing what that really means. On paper, the lot might look amazing. Big acreage, wooded, maybe even with water nearby. But then you go to build and find out you can't. Why? Because somewhere along the way, the previous owner agreed to a conservation easement, a legal agreement that permanently limits what can be done on the land to protect wildlife, trees, wetlands, or scenic views. And here's the kicker. Those restrictions stick with the land even after it changes hands. So you might not be able to build, clear trees, farm, fence it, or even subdivide depending on what the easement says. So here's lesson number 5. Always check for conservation easements before you buy. You can review the deed or title report or use tools like Land ID and turn on the conservation easement layer. Or call the county or local land trust for confirmation. Because if you're planning to build but the land's been promised to stay forever wild, you could end up owning a nature preserve instead of a home site. Mistake number 6. One of the fastest ways to turn dream land into a disappointment? Assuming the zoning lets you do whatever you have got planned. You want to live in an RV, park a tiny home, drop a mobile home, start a little farm? Zoning will either say go for it or absolutely not. I've seen buyers grab what looked like the perfect off-grid getaway only to find out the county doesn't allow long-term RV living. Or they plan to build a tiny house and the minimum square footage is 1,000 square feet. Or they wanted chickens and it's zoned strictly residential. But here's the thing, even rural land can have restrictions. And just because the neighbor has a mobile home doesn't mean it's legal. So here's lesson number 6. Never assume, always verify. Call the county planning or zoning department. Ask them what's allowed by right and what needs a permit or variance. Because your plan only works if zoning says yes. Mistake number 7. Here's a sneaky one that can cost you big, even before you build a thing. Buying land that already has code violations attached to it. Yes, that's a thing. Counties can issue fines for all kinds of issues. Junk and debris on the lot, illegal grading, overgrown weeds, unsafe structures, even an old mobile home that was never properly removed. And guess what? Those violations don't stay with the old owner. They transfer with the land, which means you inherit the mess and the bill. I've seen buyers close on what looked like a cheap lot only to get hit with cleanup orders and thousands in fines just weeks later. So here's lesson number 7. Always check with the county code enforcement office before you buy. Ask if there are any open violations or pending fines on the property. And if you're working with a title company, don't assume they'll catch it. Code enforcement liens often don't show up in a standard title search unless you pay for a separate municipal lien report. Because you don't want your first act of land ownership to be paying for someone else's mess. Mistake number 8. You won't buy a car without checking what similar ones are selling for, right? But for some reason, a lot of people buy land without checking what nearby lots are actually worth. And that's how people end up overpaying or worse, stuck with a lot they can't resell. I've seen this happen too many times. Someone finds a property for $25,000 and thinks it's a great deal. Then later realizes similar lots in the same area are going for $12,000. Or they plan to flip it and once they list it, no one bites because the market just isn't there. So here's lesson number 8. Always look at comparable sales, also known as comps, before you buy. Use Zillow's sold filter and set the time frame to the past 12 months. Focus on properties with similar size, location, access, and terrain, not just price. This gives you a real sense of what buyers are actually paying, not just what sellers are asking. Because buying blind isn't investing, it's guessing. And in land, guessing can cost you tens of thousands of dollars. Mistake number 9. So you find a lot in a clean, quiet neighborhood, paved roads, maybe a lake nearby, and you see there's an HOA. You think, great, that means the area is well maintained. And sometimes that's true. But here's the mistake. Assuming the HOA will work in your favor without actually reading the rules. Because buried in the fine print could be no RVs, mobile homes, or tiny homes, strict architectural design requirements, rules against short-term rentals or parking work vehicles, and monthly or annual dues, sometimes with surprise assessments. I've seen buyers grab a great-looking lot only to find out later they can't build what they want or use the land how they planned. So here's lesson number 9. Always read the HOA CC&Rs, that's short for covenants, conditions, and restrictions, before you buy. Ask the seller or HOA directly for a copy. Look at building rules, land use restrictions, rental policies, and fee structures, and be clear what you're getting into, both the protections and the limitations. An HOA can be a good thing It might help maintain roads, amenities, and even protect property values. But it can also come with strict rules about how you're allowed to use your land. Mistake number 10. This is one of those hidden land buying mistakes that can quietly kill your plans. Not checking the soil CAP score. The soil capability score, also known as the CAP score, is a number that tells you how suitable the land is for farming, building, and drainage. It's based on slope, erosion risk, soil depth, and water tension. And it matters a lot more than people think. But here's the part that trips people. A lower score is better, and a higher score, that usually means trouble. A score of 1 to 3 generally means good soil, better odds for septic approval, easier development, or farming. A score of 7 or 8 often means rocky, shallow, or poorly draining soil, may not pass a perk test, and could require costly engineering to build. I have seen properties that look perfect, flat, green, great location, but the soil CAP score came back as a 7. No septic approval, no build, no deal. So here's lesson number 10. Check the soil CAP before you buy, especially if the land is rural or off-grid. You can use tools like Land ID, just select the parcel boundary and generate a soil report right inside the platform. And if public sewer isn't available and you're planning to build, consider getting a perk test before closing, because great land on paper isn't worth much if the soil can't support your plan. But here's the thing, avoiding these 10 mistakes will definitely help you if you're buying land for personal use. But if you're looking to flip land and actually make money from it, there's a whole different set of lessons you need to know, especially the one that got me sued. So watch this video next to learn what most land investors don't find out until it's too late.